around the corner. When she concentrated, she was able to track the sounds of ongoing movement to the records room. As the records clerk, Charlotte had intimate knowledge of what was inside that room. Computers full of sensitive commercial information, as well as rows and rows of legal documentation, including contracts and draft tenders, not to mention the personnel files for every employee who worked for Saxon and Archer Corp. When Molly's answering machine came on, Charlotte realized she'd accidentally called Molly's home line rather than her friend's cell phone. She glanced at her watch. Molly was a librarian who worked Saturdays, but she should have been home by now, might just be in another room. "Molly," she said when the beep sounded, her voice trembling despite herself. "Please pick up." Nothing. No response. About to hang up and try Molly's cell phone, she heard the sound of the receiver being handled. Molly came on the line a second later, her tone sharp with concern. "Charlie? What's wrong?"
"Oh, you're home."
Charlotte swallowed in a vain effort to wet a throat so dry it felt as if it were lined with broken gravel. Taking a deep breath when her pounding heart threatened to drown out everything else, she said,
"There's someone else in the office and there shouldn't be. I came back from the bathroom and heard them moving around."
"Leave!" Molly's voice was urgent. It was good advice, but Charlotte didn't want to run, to hide, didn't want to be a coward as she so often was. Finding courage from the intense, painful frustration inside her, she said, "No." And though her skin was hot and her breath shallow, her pulse in her mouth, she rose from her crouch. "It's probably only the building security guard doing an unscheduled round," she added, in an attempt to convince herself there was no reason to fear.
"But could you stay on the phone with me while I go check it out?"
"I'm right here." Grabbing a large stapler from the cubicle opposite where she'd been hiding, Charlotte slipped out of her low-heeled slides and patted down the beige of the carpet, trying to calm herself with rational thoughts. There was no reason for an intruder to break in to commit industrial espionage. Everyone knew Saxon and Archer was in trouble. Trouble so bad that even the sharks who usually circled dying companies had declared them of no interest. That dire state of affairs is why the new CEO, with his reputation as a ruthless negotiator with a razor-sharp mind, had been brought on board. Rumor was the powers that be had been so desperate to secure his services, they'd given him a chunk of the tightly held company as part of his pay package. Of course, those shares would be worthless if he didn't manage the Herculean task of hauling Saxon and Archer out of its death spiral. And Charlotte couldn't think about that, about the possibility of losing her job, without breaking into a cold sweat. So she shoved that line of thinking aside to focus on the here and now. Right now, it made no sense that someone would want to steal data on a floundering company. And there was nothing else here to steal, unless this was one very aggressive recruiter who planned to poach Saxon and Archer personnel and was laying the groundwork. Yes, that was going to happen. Not. It had likely just been files falling to the floor, or a door moving because of a draft generated by an air conditioning vent, or... Screaming as she saw the shape of a very big, very muscular man move out from inside the records room, she threw the stapler. He caught it in one big hand, stared at it with steel-gray eyes, then at her. A single raised eyebrow. "Perhaps you'd better answer that." Charlotte realized he was talking about her phone. Her fingers had a death grip on it, and she could hear Molly yelling her name even from this distance. Bringing it to her ear as her face flushed to a no-doubt horrific shade of red, she said, "I'm fine," to her best friend. "I'm glad to hear that." With those words, the dark-haired and very familiar man across from Charlotte held out the stapler. "You might be needing this, Ms.
"Baird?"
she said in a croak of a tone. Coughing, she managed to